We went over and we're shoveling my buddy. This is an old German lady shoveling her roof for her because like everybody's worried about the roof falling in. And I just pushed him off the roof, and he just fell like 6 feet onto the snow. He couldn't get out, but she said, "Cody, you're shoveling the shingles. You're shoveling my shingles." The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format. So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Heyo.
HUNTR Podcast, episode 131. 131 episodes deep. It's pretty good. Jared's a little winded. Nick and I just had to watch him do 50 push-ups, so,
Impressive. I felt kind of challenged, not challenged.
I don't think we challenged you at all. We were just like, oh, really? You could do that? And you're like, let me show you right now. We're like, okay, dude. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like flips the table out of the way. He's like, I'll prove it to you right now. Dude, nobody was questioning you.
You get fired up about this Iowa conversation here.
Yeah, that's what happens, man. It just starts boiling in your blood.
Yeah.
You got to work it out. So, June 1st still. We shot a double today. So if you listened to last week, still June 1st. Still June. But it's June.
Going no hat again today. So yeah, if you don't recognize, I'm Jared.
Oh, Jared. Yeah. Not a guest. Jared here. Got another haircut. That's like the second haircut in 3 weeks.
Well, now that it's cut, I got to keep it cut.
That's pretty.
So I apologize for, the hairline and everything. So.
Yeah. People get it.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Kind of called out
I'm in my 30s now, so.
Yeah. It's fine. Kind of called out like the military aspect doing your push-ups. They wouldn't have let you have that sissy long hair in the military. No, they would cut it off. No hair longer than your dick.
And we'll cut it there.
I need to
go ahead and
cut
restart.
my hair.
Yeah, Dick's like. So yeah. Anyways, that's it. Yeah, still June. Deer growing, food plots. Hopefully, well, I guess Nick, what is this? If it's probably like June 10th, 12th.
Coming out on June 13th.
June 13th. Hopefully, we've had rain by now, because if not, we're in deep shit.
Yeah.
We're already dry as of this point. The 10-day does not look good. So if we don't have rain by June 13th, we're going to start talking a different tune on the next podcast about how we're feeling about summer stuff.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. But we are going to we'll talk a little bit of everything. We'll talk a little Iowa today. But we're going to talk a little everything. We've got Chris Dunkin from GSM on. Chris obviously being an Iowa resident. And you might notice the bucks behind him as well as reference to that. But we're going to talk about realistic expectations, I think, of some of that stuff. And then also...
There you go. Realistic expectations.
Yeah. Also just talking about kind of the summer side of things. Because I think Iowa is kind of one of those places that, from the outside looking in, I would think, oh, there's ag everywhere. Like maybe you don't have to worry about summer stuff, planting crops, putting beans in or doing any of that because farmers doing it. But I think a lot of people still are doing that kind of stuff out there, depending on which part of Iowa you're in, would be the case. So
we don't know. We've never been.
Yeah, we're the fat kids looking.
We're 5 points in though, so Chris can maybe give us an update on our likelihood of drawing.
That's true.
At some point in our lifetime, and
yeah, it'll happen here at some point. So, anyways, let's bring Chris on.
What's up, guys?
Sorry you had to maybe witness Jared doing push-ups like that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what prompted that.
That's impressive.
It was.
That's clean, right? Could you see me over there?
I couldn't see you, but I could hear those guys counting. So
he could visualize you.
It was clean. I've got good form on him.
Visualize the push-ups in action. It's just that summer pump.
How old are Jared? How old are you again? Like 30?
30. Yeah.
You get to my age, it'll be way tougher for you to do that.
What are you, like 36?
I am 36.
Get
6 more years, dude, I'm telling you.
That's going to happen that quick? Man, I hope
you just
not.
start going downhill.
You get to be my age, 36.
Yeah. You get to be my age. You're pretty much fucking
You
dead.
can't use that excuse, dude.
There's not much left.
Jeremy's almost 40.
I know, man. That's scary.
You believe that? I said that to my wife the other day. My business partner's almost 40 years old. I said, what's going on here?
That's why I talked to somebody.
Yeah, it hit me when I turned 35, because when I was 35, I was like, I was looking at the 15 years before, and that 20 to 35, a lot changed, but like physically, I didn't feel like a ton changed. But then I'm looking like the next 15. Oh my gosh, like I'm going to look completely different in 15 more years. So
yeah.
Pretty wild.
Yeah. I think my scary thought is I got a message the other day about like my high school reunion, and it's my 20th high school reunion.
Have you had one already?
No, it's this year.
Dude, I would love to go to a high school reunion. I'm like, who's going to coordinate this thing?
Well, that's what I asked. I was like, what are we doing? And they're like, there's a bunch of brewery. I was like, who's paying for it? Like, what are we doing here? And
what do you mean? Everybody pays for their own stuff.
I don't know, man. It seems pretty
I
disorganized.
would love to go to a high school reunion. I miss those people, kind of.
20 years.
It'd be cool to see them at least.
Yeah, I'm up for it. Yeah, I'm on my 20 year. So you're only on like 10. I don't know.
2011, I graduated. 12.
12. Yeah, I don't know if they do any of those for 12.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
20.
no.
Isn't 20 your first?
It seems like it should be more often than that. 10.
I haven't had one yet, so I don't know.
10's a decade.
At this point, 20's not panning out. It'll be 25.
Have you had any high school reunions, Chris? You're 36.
They did a 5-year.
They did a 5-year?
Since.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I wasn't even out of college yet.
Well, it's not. There's nobody. It's just like somebody has to coordinate it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure our class president had a heroin overdose or something. I don't know.
So you're saying they're not going to coordinate it?
I don't think they're going to be coordinating it.
Yeah.
Looks like you need to step up and do it now.
Well, I'm not the guy to coordinate anything. I'm just like I'm the show up and,
I mean, I'm all for
whatever.
it as long as it's like not September to whatever, January.
Yeah. Speaking of which, dude, I've got some stuff going. I have a wedding September 23rd, October 1st, and October 15th.
And September 14th or 15th.
No, that's the one that's on the 23rd.
I thought it was on the 15th.
Yeah, I was wrong.
Oh, no wonder you're pushing
you didn't
for
see me
early
come
season
back?
Kansas. No.
Well, I was already pushing for it,
I know.
but now I've got time.
We drew Kansas this year, Chris, so we're back in Kansas at least.
Very nice. I drew Kansas too.
You did? You're going to leave Iowa?
I am.
Oh my
because
gosh.
I'm going early muzzleloader when I can't hunt. Here in Iowa.
Smart.
Why don't you go early archery when you can't hunt?
Nope.
Where are you going to Kansas?
So do you know Seth McGinn with Can Cooker?
Yeah.
Seth McGinn's
He
Can
actually
Cooker.
invited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he invited me. So we've
cool.
been talking about it for a handful of years, and then he texted me. He's like, "Put in for a tag and get down here and early muzzleloader hunt." And I think his place is like 4 hours from me, so it's not.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I think it'll should be a good year. Well, if they start getting rain, I know they've been dry too down there. Big B was saying that they were pretty dry down there.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'd imagine most of the country is getting this.
Are you dry, Chris? Where you're at?
Yeah, we as of yesterday had been 21 days since we had rain here.
Oh,
and
get out.
I probably look tired right now because there was a 40% chance of rain last night, and I just was waking up like every hour, checking my phone, looking at the radar.
Oh, that bad.
And then at 3:30, I looked, and there was a system that was popping up to the southwest, and it was like, I was like, this is going to either barely hit us or barely miss us. So for the next like hour and a half, I was basically up in my kitchen, drinking coffee, looking at the radar, walking outside. And then about 5 o'clock, all of a sudden it just started building to the south and to the east, right towards us. And then it just like sat right on top of us. And we got a 1.5 inches of rain.
Holy jeez. That'll break it.
And we needed it bad.
You did get it.
The yards here were turning brown. And as of before this rain, we were 34% drier at my farm than last year.
Wow. Yeah, I worry about that. I mean, because obviously we're recording this June 1st, but I mean, it's a critical time in the crop phase, for corn and for beans especially.
This is the earliest I can recall getting a drought like this. Typically, it's like August it shuts off.
Yeah.
But this is like, I don't remember one
No.
in May, June.
No.
I don't know. Chris, what do you have in the ground that you're, so anxious over? You're not farming, right? You're just food plots.
This year was quite a bit different because, this farm here, it's 155 acres, but there was 50 acres of tillable on it. So the farmer would go in, he'd plant it, and then I would just tell him where to leave it, right? But then this year, I had owned the farm long enough that I could enroll into CRP.
Mm.
So I enrolled basically everything besides about 12 acres in CRP. So we planted that April 3rd or 4th.
You planted that, or does somebody from like the township or the county come out?
No. So, I mean, I could plant it or basically pay someone to plant it or find someone that has a drill. And I don't have a drill, so my neighbor planted it for me.
Okay.
And then I planted 3.5 acres of clover. So that's been sitting there germinated about this tall.
Oh,
and then
that's where mine's at too.
Corn.
Wow.
7 acres of corn you planted?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, out of that 50 acres, everything is planted to something right now. And it all started great. And then it just dried up. And I looked at the corn was, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches tall as of yesterday. But you could tell stuff was starting to stress. And then, I've been doing so much different habitat work around here. I planted 32 trees this year. So like 12 apple trees. And then I planted trees like up and down my driveway. I transplanted some big bur oak trees that were like 15 to 20 foot tall.
Wow.
So
It
has been, yeah.
How do you even transport? Did you use one of those big spades?
Yeah, there's a local guy here that he's got it's a huge spade, and it's on a semi pretty much, and he backs right up to it. And so I brought trees off the farm that I had found and marked that were on the field edges over there, and then I had them go up and down the road here at the house. But it's already hard enough to a bur oak is super tough to transplant anyway, so I knew it was going to be pretty delicate. And then especially when it hasn't rained for 3 weeks and it's been 10 to 15 degrees above normal temperature, so it's been busy. So I finally got to the point where literally I've got this old truck, and I put a big water tank in the back, and I just fill that thing back up to one tree, let it trickle out for 3 hours, move it to the next one. And so far they're doing good. So
wow.
Dude, what does it cost to move one tree?
$200.
$200 per, big 15 to 20 foot
That's
tree.
not bad considering you're talking about a 15 to 20 foot tree, whereas, you buy these 4-footers or 5-footers. I mean, odds of them, first of all, living are not good. And I mean, they still are expensive.
Yeah, they're still over $100 here. You get into like a 5 or 6 foot tree that's potted, you're looking like a swamp white or, any oak, you're looking at $100 to $129. So then I was talking to him, and he goes, well, if I don't have to travel very far, I typically just charge $200 just for spading the tree and replanting it for you. And it was because it was on my farm. It was $200 a tree. So I was like, man, I'm how many years ahead on growth now?
Yeah, that's
if
huge.
I lose one, then I can go replace it fairly quickly.
Dude, that spade is the tool. I can't imagine trying to move. I mean, even a tree that's 5 foot tall, trying to dig with a shovel around the root system to get that out of there. It's like dang near impossible.
No, that doesn't work really well. Chris, I guess talk a little bit about your setup there, because you've kind of, it's been over the last 2 years or 3 years, you've started to kind of piece this farm together.
Yeah. So this farm I'd actually leased starting in 2018. And then as soon as I stepped foot on it, I fell in love with it. And the original farm that I leased was 100 acres. And I'd been saving up money, and, Alex my wife had been, she was saving up money with me, and we both had some secondary sources of income coming in, trying to do what we could. I sold I went through a phase where I needed to have a new truck like every 3 years. And in 2019, I'm like, yep, I'm done with this. So I sold my truck actually back to the dealership that I bought it from. And then I bought a 2002 F-250. And long story short, like just basically consolidating our auto bills and then just trying to throw money right into an account when we got it really helped. But once I figured we were close enough to get the down payment on it, I called the guy who owned the farm, and I had a good relationship with him because I'd been leasing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just asked him, I said, hey, if you're ever interested in selling this 100 acres, let me know. And he goes, okay, I'll let you know. There's a good chance I'll be interested in the near future. And that would have been like, man, that would have been, I think, summer of 20. And
Mm-hmm.
then it was like a month went by, and he called me and he goes, hey, I'm ready to sell, but I only want to sell the south half.
Okay.
So he wanted to sell the south half in 1 year, like this, like right now. And then he goes, but for tax reasons, I don't want to sell the north half yet, but we'll work something out where you can buy it. Well, the way this farm lays, that made me really nervous because it would literally, like, if I couldn't get the north half, it would just not be good because it's a field that runs through the north and south.
Yeah.
So it would completely mess the hunting up. But long story short, got the south half bought, and then in the purchase agreement and whatever, we put in there that I would have first right to buy the north half, and that if he wanted to sell it and we couldn't agree on a price, that he would have to essentially like bring an accepted offer to the table, and I could match that price. Now, I don't know if that would actually held up in court if he would have tried to screw me on it, but I didn't care. I was like, dude, I was buying it at the right price, and I really knew it was a good farm. So we bought the first 50, and then that turned into kind of a shit show about 2 weeks before we were going to close, because the bank called me and said, hey, there's a problem. There's some liens on this property.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't liens that were like, oh, well, the purchase price is this, so it's going to pay off the liens, and then there's your farm. Like, these were like significant
exceeded the sale amount.
Oh yeah, by a lot.
Whoa.
So anyways, we were supposed to close in October of 20. We did not get closed until June of 21.
Holy cow.
How did they handle
And
that?
then that's when oh, dude, it was such a pain.
Did they forgive some of those liens?
Yeah, I mean, the government wants their money, right? So they basically, he didn't get $1. He didn't get a penny from it. But all the COVID stuff was going on. So it's already slow. It's already a slow process when you're working with a government agency on a lot of different things, right? But then when it was the IRS, it was just painstakingly slow, and they had to basically review the whole thing and then sign off on it. And the bank continued to extend, all of our, we sent everything in, we got the interest rate locked in, whatever. And then they extended it, and then they extended it a second time. And then I still remember it was like June 6th or whatever it was. And it was like a week before they wouldn't extend it again. Then we had to go through the whole process again, which I know it's not a huge deal, but it's just a pain.
Yeah.
So literally I called this guy. I was like, I'm taking this into my own hands now. So I called this guy's tax attorney, and I'm like, hey, have you heard anything from the IRS? And he's like, no, I have heard nothing. I followed up like 2 weeks ago. They haven't got back to me. And I go, can you just like send me the guy's name who you're trying to get a hold of? So he's like, yeah, but you're not going to,
good luck.
You're not going to be able to do anything I haven't been able to do. Right. So I'm like, I don't care, dude. Like, just send me his information. So it had like the phone number to his office, his email. So I tried that. A couple days went by, nothing. And then I actually Facebook stalked him. I found him on Facebook. And then, no, sorry. I found him on LinkedIn. That's what it was. I found him on LinkedIn. And then once I figured out where he lived and stuff, this sounds really weird, but then I could find him on Facebook. So I found him on Facebook. Then I sent him a message on Facebook and basically saying like, hey, I'm Chris Dunkin. I'm trying to buy this farm. We've been, I understand you're crazy busy. And he was not very happy. He like read it and then he like chewed my ass. Like,
because you stalked him. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he said, this is not like professional to contact me on Facebook about business stuff.
You say, guess what, bud? It's not professional not to write me back for a week.
Yeah, professional sale out
Talk
the
to me
window.
about professionalism.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So can you sign this for me? While I'm here, can you sign this real quick?
Yeah, man. So then he literally like was Johnny on the spot after that. And it was like 3 days later, he got everything approved, sent the stuff to the attorney.
Wow.
And the lender called me and they're like, and this lady had been the lender for like, I don't know, 20 some years. And she's like, I've never had anybody do what you just did. Like, she's like, I thought for sure we were going to have to redo all your stuff. I've never had someone who's buying something like go to the level you did to try to push this through. But also what I knew was happening was in that time period, land prices were skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Like they were just going through the roof. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, this guy is like,
he's
going to
realize
from.
Yeah.
He knew it. Like he's no dummy. He's sitting there watching other farms around here sell for quite a bit more than what our purchase agreement said.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'm not letting this go. And anyways, that worked out. So that we got that first 50 in June of 21.
Wow. I mean, sometimes it's funny that she says, oh, I've never seen any buyer. Listen, at the end of the day, especially if it's a property you want, right? You figure out a way to make it happen. You're going to do everything within your power until somebody says, listen, there's nothing else you can do. It is what it is. Because if you rely on other people, it's just a fact. Nobody's going to care about the situation in the property as much as you do.
Well, it's also funny how often that gets said in real estate. I can't tell you, just with a fairly short amount of time, Jeremy and I have been selling real estate. It's like almost every other transaction you hear, like, I've never seen that done before. Or it's like, oh, this has never come up before.
Yeah,
it's
like we pulled,
what do you mean?
We pulled deeds
you've been lending
all the
for
time.
20 years. Like, what do you mean it's the first time? They're like, I don't know.
Yeah, we pull deeds all the time, not because we have to, but it's just good knowledge to have going in the deal. And like half these people have never heard of it before.
Yeah. The needle gets moved by people who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. So like what you did, while he may not have thought it was professional, it's like that's what got that farm bought.
That's what you need.
Hey.
Oh, 100%.
And I mean, did your seller know that those liens were out there and that they were legitimate, I guess?
Funny how that comes out.
He knew they were. But the thing is, what caught me off guard was this guy, he had owned it was like 20 some hundred acres, right? In my area. And I actually had a different friend of mine that had just actually two friends of mine that had just closed on farms from this guy, and nothing happened.
Huh.
So what the hiccup was here was that he had those farms in an LLC.
Yep.
And he had this farm in his name.
Personal name.
So, yep. So the farms that were in the LLC, like nothing happened.
Right.
It was just boom, done. But the farms that were strictly in his name, that's what caused all this.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was the first part. And then since then we've had 3 other private sales to get it to 155.
And all of those his parcels or other people's?
One other one was the North 50.
Yep.
Which we just closed on last year. So that was the 4th out of the 4 parcels.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, after we closed on it all happened really quick, but after we closed on that South 50, we had been saving up money to be able to, in our mind, purchase 100 acres, 100, right?
Yeah.
So there was 35 acres to the south, and I had become friends with this guy. He was from up by Des Moines, and I had become pretty good friends with him over the years that I had leased it and now bought this 50. And we would share camera photos back and forth. And he had always told me, Chris, I will give you first right to buy this. You've been an awesome neighbor, but it's not going to be until like 16 or 17, because it's going to be when my son's a senior in high school.
Yep.
And he goes, I bought this land as kind of something we could both enjoy, that I would then sell as it's appreciated in value for 10, 12 years, and then pay off his school.
Yep.
He'd go to college then. Well, so we closed on that first 50 in June, finally, of 21. And then in August of 21, he called me and he said, hey, Chris, you know how I told you that I would wait until my son was a senior in high school to sell this place? And he goes, I changed my mind. I'm ready to sell it now, because he goes, I asked my son this morning if he was wanting to come down to go youth hunting. And he goes, he's so busy with baseball and football. And he goes, Dad, I don't think I'm going to want to go down to the farm this year. So he said, I'm an hour and a half away. I think I'm ready to sell it. So then I had to, I was luckily ready for this one.
Yeah.
But I had to get all that dialed in, because I didn't want that to go. You only have so many chances to buy your neighbor. But the thing is, like, this was something in my mind that was affordable, because I had already kind of been ready for the 100. And then it was like the perfect bedding area that butted up to what I had just bought. So I don't want to bore you guys, but this whole thing just went really quick. So then we closed on his in November, and a bunch of stuff just fell into place on all of this, right? So we closed on his in November, and there used to be part of my farm, there was a reclamation, or there was a old mine. Like, I live in Marion County, and Marion County was like the coal mining capital of the United States. I mean, so we had all of these giant strip pits that, like, you couldn't get a vehicle around or anything, right? And there was this 35 acres that was on the backside of the strip pit, and they had since reclaimed it. So they had reclaimed it in 2019, which means they go in, the government comes in, and they basically take all that stuff out, smooth it up, plant grasses and whatever. Well, that 35 had never been logged before. And I think it was probably because of that strip pit being there and just the access, like they couldn't get back there without going through someone else's property. So when I walked it, I was blown away by the amount of really big walnuts there. And it was a perfect creek bottom that just had walnuts that were, any of them from this big, but I'm talking some of them that were 30-inch walnut trees.
Jeez.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I went to school for natural resources. It was called animal ecology, but I had a bunch of buddies that were in forestry. Some of them do logging. So I had one of those guys come over, and he looked at it and gave me a number that blew me away on what kind of timber value was there. And that was a select cut, right? So we took 65 walnuts off of 35 acres.
Wow.
Holy cow.
And we didn't take anything that was, I would say the smallest one was 20 inches.
Wow.
So I've got a lot left that I'm just going to it's kind of like a savings account for me, right? I'm just going to I've been doing TSI down there, cutting stuff, getting rid of the junk trees around them. So anyways, we closed on that, and then we got that cash flow coming in. And so now we were sitting on 85 acres. And then December 7th, my wife called me, and this is also of 21. So we've closed in June.
Jeez.
Now we've closed in November, and now it's December 7th. And my wife has a real estate license. So sometimes we hear about certain properties that are going to hit the market before others, right? Just because, especially if someone reaches out to you as the agent, you're going to know right away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she got an inquiry off the real estate website that said so-and-so who has 20 acres and a house in this area is looking to potentially sell it. It was a contact me form. So I'm not going to say her name, but like that was the lady that had the brand new house with 20 acres that touched the 35 acres we just bought that then rolled into our 50. I don't really know how this, I literally, it's just crazy how this works. So then Alex calls me. She's like, "You're not going to believe this." And I'm like, "What?" And she tells me, I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So I go, she's like, what are we going to do? I'm like, "You need to call her right now and tell her that we want to buy it. Like, tell her like we want to buy it and we'll figure out a way to make this work." And just see if she's open to that. Like, so she has to disclose to her that she's a real estate agent, that she got the request, but she's interested in purchasing that property. And the timing of this, like, all was just perfect, you guys. So like I had the money from the logs, but then also we had bought a house in Knoxville that we bought private, that we did a lot of updates to. And then everybody knows what the housing market did, from 2018, 19, 20, 21, it was just going up.
Yeah.
So we hit that, we bought it in, 18, and then we fixed it up and the market started going. So we had a lot of equity in that. So long story short, we sold that house and then we bought this house that was right here on our property. And then another year went by and the guy who still owned that North 50, he wasn't ready to sell. And then last year he called me, he goes, "I'm ready to sell that North 50, but we're going to have to go through the same process as last time with the IRS. I'm just telling you."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, dude, we've done it before, so let's do it again." And we agreed on price. And honestly, like, I will say this, like, I thought for sure he was going to be super unfair. I just, in my mind, I don't want to say like him as a person, because he's a very nice guy. I got along with him very well. But I'm like, I just naturally was assuming like a way worse price per acre he was going to give me, because he knew I wanted it that bad.
Yeah.
Yep. But no, we came to an agreement on that. So that's how the last 3 years has went here.
That's crazy, man.
It's just been kind of a whirlwind, and now we've got kind of our dream farm per se, where we want to be at, and just raising the kids here and doing as much work on it as we can.
It's nuts, man, because the neighbor thing is super critical, because obviously if you're looking to expand or do whatever you want, ultimately, the neighbor's property is worth more to you than it is to basically anybody else. Right. So, if it's worth $5,000 an acre, there's a number over that you're willing to pay, because it is worth more than you. Like you said, I mean, how often are you going to have a neighbor's property come up in your lifetime and sell? For some of us, it's once. It'll sell one time and you'll never have a shot at it again. And so it's a tough thing when people start to look at their property. And I think a lot of people get hung up on the fact, like, I need to go buy a 160 or a 200 out of the gate. But, eventually, and maybe it doesn't happen as fast as it happened with you, but eventually those neighbor pieces will come up for sale, whether it's private sale conversation or just by coincidence they hit the market. But you just have to be patient around that. But I think, to your point, you kind of also have to be prepared, because if it happens fast, you better be ready to pounce on it.
Yeah, and after going through this, right, and like, I want to continue to build on here. There's going to be opportunity. I don't know when that opportunity will be, just like what you said, right? So like everything that we're doing, in the back of my mind, I'm always telling myself, like, do I want to go buy that new truck? I would love to have a skid loader here. I'd love to have my own nice tractor with a drill, and I would love to have those things, and we could afford to do that. But also, like, in my mind, I'm sitting there going, man, like, do I really want to go spend $60,000? It's because now it's just putting me farther back from being able to add on, or maybe buy something somewhere else, down the road. So this whole thing's been a big learning process to me. But you're right. I mean, you just never know when that's going to happen. And I think the key for us with this was, once we kind of figured out what area we wanted to buy in, and then honestly, like, we had firsthand experience on the farm, but was like not necessarily waiting for it to hit the market. we had good relationships with realtors around here who would keep us in the loop on certain farms and areas, but then also like not being scared just to go knock on a door as well or make a phone call. And then once we got that first piece, just keeping the relationships as good as you can with your neighbors. And then, but also being really careful of when you say you're interested in buying, because one thing that's happened now twice is I've made that comment, and both times within a year on both of them. One of them was a month, one of them was a year later. Both of those people got a hold of me. So I don't want to go like, there's another farm that I'd love to buy next to me. I'm not ready for it yet. To hit the market tomorrow. If he called me tomorrow and said, do you want to buy it? I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go tell him like, hey, I'm interested in buying your farm if you ever want to sell it, because you put that bug in their ear.
Yeah.
It really gets them thinking about it.
So obviously you had, I guess the house and the 20 acres that kind of came up through, let's call it normal real estate. But everything else was,
real quick, that's the house you're living in now. You sold your other house and moved into that house on 20 acres.
Yes.
Cool.
Right. And that 20 just, it literally, it like squares off my farm. It was, going back through the deed and everything. And it's interesting when you get you buy a farm and you get the deed and you can like read all that. So essentially what we've done is like, we have pieced this entire place back to what it was 100 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
Are there other existing parcels of the original that you haven't bought yet?
No.
You got it all. That's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was it a family member of the North and South owner, or he was way down the line?
Yeah. So the initial like layout of it, there was, it was like in the, I don't know what year, 1840s or wherever the heck it was as far back as it went. But it was a husband and a wife, and then they had, basically sold some to somebody, and then they gave some to a relative, and then this guy that I bought the first 50 off of, he ended up getting the 135. He inherited that 135, and then he sold off the 35 and kept the 100 because the 100 had the 50 tillable.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it all broke up. And then there was a few sales on this, as like this 20 was more cattle pasture.
That's awesome.
It's interesting how it all worked out.
Does your deed description on the 35 say anything about, like in the meets and bounds description, does it mention any of the walnut trees?
Nope.
No.
Should have.
That's crazy, man.
And that's one thing I would definitely advise people to try to, the guy who owned that 35 before me, he's an awesome dude, like loves to kill big bucks and super nice guy, but I don't think I know he didn't know the value that he had of timber on that farm.
Well, dude, have you guys now talked about Jeremy's farm in Ohio? I mean, he just got an appraisal on his place, and it's the same deal, and we're white oaks out here, but I mean, that's what sells. Walnuts sell too, but white oaks are right there, and there's a lot more of them.
Yeah, and I don't know where mine will end up, but I mean, I've got about, in a select cut, I've got 300,000 board feet coming off of that Ohio place.
Off of how many acres? 100?
85 of timber.
Yeah, coming off of 85 acres of timber.
Yeah. I mean, but it'll be, depending on the bids,
that's a good sale.
It'll be 150 to 220,000. Just depends.
That's awesome.
And I tell people, I paid $370 for it.
Yeah, dude, if you know what you're looking for, you know what timber species are valuable, and like if you can, size them up, say that's a valuable tree, that's
well, and like you,
30 inches, you can just have that in your back pocket.
I didn't know like what the dollar figure was. All I know is I'm like, oh, that's a big white oak, or this is a big white oak. Just like you said, that's a big walnut. Like all I know is in my head, like that's worth money. Now, how much? I have no idea. Right. That's why when, eventually I get the bids and stuff, it'll be like, wow, that's significant.
Well, I mean, dude, like just look behind the door at what Jeremy and I are doing. So like we're interested together in like some property in Illinois. It's an over-the-counter state. Illinois is $2 state too, right?
Yep.
$2 state. It's a reasonable drive for us, as opposed to like something like Kansas. And the disadvantage is we don't have those like neighbor relationships. It's not like, hey, when you're ready to sell, it's just, we have to watch the market. We have to watch properties that come up. And fortunately, we've got a network of people through Whitetail Properties that, are spread out across the country, or even just industry friends. We've gotten to know people, across the Midwest. that we can reach out to and say, hey, so-and-so is getting ready to come up. What do you know about this area? Would you be willing to run down and check out the timber, some potential elements of value that we can, just have knowledge on before making an offer from 3-4 states away.
Yeah.
It's definitely trickier, and you need more of a network of people that you can rely on for that. But that's huge, man, to have that. The timber is often overlooked.
It is, and it's overlooked a lot, and it's mismanaged a lot. And the days of back, I remember talking to Winky.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
He used to live right here, and he would tell me he could go buy a farm in the 90s and then sell a couple trees off it and pay for that acre, right? So it was crazy.
It was Winky that told us, and a guy would have told him beforehand that at one time you could have bought all of Iowa, for the value of the timber on it.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And now everybody knows. I mean, not everybody. Obviously, there's examples. We just talked about examples, but there's so many more people that understand now that there is value there, and a lot of the timber in southern Iowa has been just ravaged and then just left to just blow up to
trash,
whatever. Right?
Really,
it's just you can go in some places and it's all the good trees were taken, so you leave all the junk trees, and then those. No one managed it. And there's so many resources now to read and watch to try to figure out how to manage your timber, right? Or even call a district forester and have them come walk it with you. But yeah, I mean, it's always good when things happen like what happened with that 35 for me, and then what Jeremy's going through right now with that Ohio farm. That's awesome.
It's a big risk. I mean, because as non-timber experts, right? I mean, we're just kind of going off of our gut feeling there, and had it be half as what it is, I still probably would have been happy for it. It wasn't like what I was banking on paying, with the farm and stuff. But obviously, that's a huge amount of my investment back in my pocket, and it's going to increase the quality of my deer hunting substantially on that piece of ground. So I think that people start to underestimate that. That said, where you're at in Iowa and where I'm at in Ohio, if I had that same farm in southern West Virginia, right, I wouldn't pull near as much dollars because of the different values in these states,
or
and the
even
different
Southwest
logging.
PA where we're
at. I mean,
it has to do with proximity of the loggers.
Oh, it's an insane scale that you start to see slide just 50 miles or 100 miles outside of one area versus another.
Well, and that's really the main thing. Like, I mentioned these farms in Illinois. It's like Jeremy and I can look at the pictures and say that's, there's timber value there. What we don't know is what the timber market is like in that county.
Yep.
Because that's what makes a big difference.
Where are the cutters? Where's the mill at? Like you just don't know where anything is. So there's a lot of things that go in. I mean, the consulting forester aspect of things is a big piece of that to have.
Well, dude, out in Iowa, I mean, I saw an article or something the other day that some parts of the state are like hitting all-time highs as far as crop rentals. Are you leasing, part of your property out, and are you seeing that in your area?
Yeah, I'm not anymore because I like I said,
CRP.
I took it all out and put it all in CRP. I put 75% of it in CRP. But like where I'm at in southern Iowa, the soil rate, the CSR, isn't as good as like you get north of me an hour. It gets amazing, right? But by me, like an average, I would say like a good rental rate down here by me would be $200 an acre.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting when I first bought it. He was paying a little bit less than that, and then kind of met in the middle. But then, the CRP contract, when I went and talked to the NRCS and whatnot, they locked me in for 10 years at, I think it was like $214, $215 an acre.
And that's a year?
Yeah, they pay it every October.
Oh, wow. So they're paying more than the actual crop lease for 10 years.
Yeah, that's what I got. Now, I'm not saying everybody's going to get that, right? It just depends on the farm and whatever else. There's a lot of variables. But when the prices of beans and corn are high like they are, then those rental rates will follow suit. But everything else does too. I mean, those guys are making good, quote unquote, they're making good money, right? That's what people say when corn is what it is and beans are what it is. But then you see those inputs just skyrocket as well.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not I'm glad I'm not a farmer. It would be fun, but man, there's a lot of
Well, dude, you'd have been
probably a lot of stress those guys deal with it.
You'd have been up a lot longer than an hour and a half drinking coffee last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I texted my stepdad yesterday. He farms a couple thousand acres here, and it's not like deer hunting ground. It's straight up ag land.
Yep.
And you might be able to kill a deer off it, but it wouldn't be like a very common deal. But I texted him. I was like, "So are you nervous with the drought of 23?" Because at the time, like, dude, like there was like a 40% chance today and 30% tomorrow, and then nothing. And he goes, "Well, that's what I got insurance for."
Yeah.
Told me, so.
Well, I think what's so crazy about some of those places, like you mentioned, that northern part of Iowa, is I don't understand how some of these guys are paying, $20,000 an acre for ground. Like we just use the case in timber. Like I can see myself paying $3,000 or $4,000 an acre for a piece of timber ground when I know there's good timber to cut off of it and make my money back. But in terms of $20,000, like it just seems like from a farming aspect, like it's so far in the future to ever make a return on investment for that land.
Yeah, we had one. Would have been. I don't think it might have been last summer or the summer before. Probably 10 miles from here that went for $23K an acre. Jeez. It was an 80. And I don't know the intricate details of the process, right? But I know that the guys that are paying that, typically like what we've got here in Marion County, for example, I would say there's 3, maybe 4 that like big time farming operations here. You still have some small ones, but you got a lot of really big ones that also are like 3rd, 4th generation farmers.
Yeah.
So I think maybe the way they look at it, and I don't want to speak for them, I don't know, but I think maybe it's potentially that they've built up to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 acres, and a lot of it's paid off. And
sure.
Like, well,
leverage.
let's add it to our. Yeah, let's just leverage it and add it in, and the bank will just
generational, acreage and
check
too.
Yeah. Yep.
Chris, you said you were your guy was paying like $200 an acre to lease from you beforehand, but you were also having him leave some acreage.
Yeah, so that's where I was losing. That's why I'm way farther ahead on this deal.
Yeah. So were you buying that back from him, or how were you working that? Have you heard? Yeah. Have you by chance listened to some of our recent conversations about buying crops back from farmers? We've been kind of circling that.
I didn't. I've been listening to your guys' podcast, but I don't recall that one. I must have missed that one.
I think I was with.
I don't know if that started with Skip or Eric Hansen. He's an ag farmer in New York. But like Jeremy and I were just circling it, like have been for a while now. I think we've got some resolution on it, but it's like, what is the right price to buy back crops from your farmer? And or the right amount of acreage to let them farm for free in exchange for. So it's that 55 seems, and maybe just around here, I don't know about in Iowa, seems like guys would say if they're farming 50 acres and they're leaving you 10, it should be like a break even.
It's about a wash.
Yeah.
That's what we did. That's exactly what we did. Oh. I left 7 acres last year. He farmed.
Okay.
Whatever, 40 acres. It was right around 40 farmed. And I just told him, he did everything. So
yeah, just take it.
Don't worry about. Yep.
Yeah.
So here.
And then I've got some leases where I will buy it back from the farmer, right? So I do that too.
And that's not cheap, right?
What's the let's see here, because this is fun for me. That's like $8,000, right? 200 times 40. 200 times 40 is $8,000 is essentially what he would have paid you to lease that ground. So if you're buying back 10, would you do that on a market value times bushels per acre? Is that how you would look at it?
So this was my stepdad, and we didn't really get into a lot of details. I just said you farm it, you fertilize it, you spray it, you make sure it looks good, you leave it where I ask you to leave it, and then just keep the cash rent. The way that I do it with other guys where I lease some ground is he will tell me, he'll literally tell me the bushels per acre he's getting on that land.
And then you just pay the market value.
Like, hey, I pay a little bit above market value for him.
A little above
because
of the hassle.
Because it's kind of a pain in the butt for him.
No doubt.
And then also, here's the other problem. If if it's beans, well, a lot of these guys pull anhydrous in the fall.
They do what?
So the problem is
Anhydrous.
they're pulling anhydrous.
What's that?
So if I leave like 4 acres,
Nitrogen.
it's like basically, fertilizer to make them grow big next year and make the soil good. But, they're going to do that in the fall.
Yep.
So now I've bought 4 acres off him. Well, now he's got to come back next spring to do it. And it's a pain in the ass for him. So I usually give a little bit more to those guys to make it worth their while.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, but it is
a game changer, right?
Spend all this. It is. It's crazy. It is so fun. It's such a good management tool. It's not even necessarily about shooting a really, a big deer. It could be about shooting, being able to really like, quote unquote, like call your herd, call or shoot a management buck. You're not going to call them out, but like get rid of a certain bully buck. Like it's a great time to do that. It's just, get rid of does,
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now at least my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the #1 thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com. Check them out. Let me ask you this, Chris.
We've been really,
as an Iowa resident and somebody who's farming or who's hunting, cropland, essentially, where you have the ability to manipulate ag. I'm not sure how to ask this. How efficient or how effective is that box blind on a half standing, half mowed cornfield setup compared to any other hunting situation you could have for whitetail? So another one would be like a pinch. Another one would be like whatever. Run down your list of potential tree stand or box blind locations. How deadly is the box blind on a half standing, half mowed scenario?
It is very, very deadly, and it literally changes everything, right? I mean, there's still the fine details that you got to do. You got to keep the pressure low. You got to put the blind in the right location where you can get in and out without blowing that field. Because at the end of the day, you're still hunting an old deer. You're still trying to kill an old deer, and those are just cagey animals. They're different animals. But like I've always said, if they don't know they're being hunted, then that's what you want, right? You want to hunt a deer that doesn't know he's being hunted. And there's a lot of time. When you guys come up here, you'll see it. But I can drive around this section in the county south, and I can see a lot of box blinds, and I bet you 3/4 of them are just in the
wrong spot.
Just the dumbest spots. Like they'll literally be like a box blind in the middle of the food plot.
Yep.
How are you going to get, you can get into that, but then how are you going to get out without every deer knowing? And big ones, unless you get a crazy cold weather pattern, right? Where you get like consistent, like I'm talking like crazy cold wind, snow for 3 or 4 days in a row. If that deer knows he's being hunted, he is not coming out unless he absolutely has zero choice and he's going to die because he's going to starve.
Yeah.
And so yes, it's very, very deadly, but also you got to know what you're doing with it. And some farms, there's a lot of farms that you just don't have a choice but to, I personally, like when I'm looking at a farm, I won't lease it, or I wouldn't buy it unless it had what I would consider great access where I can leave food and I can get in and out without being seen. If it doesn't matter how awesome that farm looks. And like, if I look at it and I'm like, man, I know there's big deer here and I can see this spot that I want to leave food, and I'll bet you I'll see 50 deer. But if I can't get in and out of it, what's the point? Because it's just not, you're going to kill one every now and then, but you're just going to mess a lot of stuff up.
Check this out, dude. Jeremy and I are looking at a property right now. Who knows? It's probably out of our price range, but it's like, it's an 80 acre tract. It's I'm going to say 80 80 to 85% of it is a big block of
Timber.
good looking timber, surrounded by agriculture.
Yep, creek bottom.
There's a big ravine that runs from the northeastern to the southwestern corner of it, with what looks like really good bedding knobs on the western side, you know, so for prevailing west wind, they're bedding across that ravine. The only tillable on this, and coincidentally, the only access to this property, it's not even, there's no road frontage. It's completely surrounded. There's a right-of-way through agriculture to the southeastern corner of this property, and that's the only agriculture that's on it. When I saw that, I was like, dude, we could freaking go in and timber that place, have the farmer that's planting the eastern field just plant that, and we'll pay him to leave what's ever left, and you kill every deer on that property out of a box blind like one day after the next.
Yeah, that's what you need. That sounds like the perfect setup.
Isn't it funny,
and
man?
especially if you can get it without them seeing you. That's another thing people overlook too.
Oh,
They're like,
huge.
I've got good entry and exit, but they don't take into account that there's a big ridge that overlooks the field, and those big boys are sitting up there watching you.
We talked about that in the last one because
dude, how many properties have you sent me? How many properties have you sent me before? Everyone, I'm like, dude, I don't see any issue with this one.
Yeah,
well, that could be it.
I mean, the number one thing, and I don't know,
other than the price,
it's not always the deal breaker. But half the time when I look at a property, the first thing I look at is like, where's the road frontage or where's the access? And if it's on the western side, I'm just like, it's out.
It's out.
Like, I don't, and it's not that you can't like go up to the north and come around and stuff. It's just, man, if you have easterly access into these properties, it just, and it makes it a lot easier.
To your point, it can't just be a big eastern-facing hillside because they'll see you coming because
Absolutely.
they're looking downwind.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's got to be some kind of something.
Well, and that's where the screening comes in. So, Chris, you planted CRP, and we kind of had this discussion before, and everybody's a little bit different.
Real quick, is that when you plant CRP, is that just straight switchgrass?
No. So the government has there's different varieties, right? Like you have a choice. You've got X amount of. It's a variety of it, but you can pick some of the stuff in it, right? So then the guy who I bought it from, he is also a hunter, and the program that I enrolled in is called CP25. So it is going to have some switch in it. It's going to have big blue stem, little blue stem, black-eyed Susan and stuff. But we did as predominant as we could of the tall grasses. And when it's good, like when you get to if it does good the first year, you get to year 2, it is pretty good. And then year 3 and on, you can definitely get in and out.
Yeah. I'd love to know.
Obviously,
I'd love to know what's in that mix. I mean, dude,
you can see usually a lot of them.
Yeah,
what it'll have.
Yeah, so we're in a situation on our farm in Ohio where I think we would be eligible for a CRP program, and
it would pay a lot more than your cash rent.
Yeah,
because your cash rent's like $75.
$75 an acre. Yeah.
Yeah. Your CRP payments would be a lot.
So
higher
I would be very curious because I don't necessarily want to go in and just plant switchgrass. I would be very I don't know what the alternative is. It's like, do we just leave it and see what comes back? Or, I mean, obviously, if you're in a CRP program, they're going to require some kind of a planting. So,
yeah, they require you to give them the seed tags, show the invoices, they'll come check it out mid-contract. Yep. They're pretty strict on it, and they've gotten more strict on it because, especially here, there's a lot of guys that they throw their farm into CRP, and the next thing you know, they're planting 10 acres of food plots on it.
Because there is a percentage that you're allowed to do something with, right?
Yeah, it depends on the program, but that's definitely something to look into. Usually it's 10%.
That's what I thought.
It's not 10% of, like, let's say like you have a farm that has 40 acres of tillable that you're going to enroll.
Yeah.
If that's not 40 continuous acres, then you can't plant 4 acres of food. And it's got to, so it's 10% of the field. If you have this field over here and then like a drive that breaks it up and then another field, it's 10% of each field of CRP.
Are there minimums too? A minimum, I assume there is minimum acreage to be enrolled.
I don't know for sure on that. I would assume so, but it really, honestly though, probably people don't worry about that because it has to have a farming history to it. So if it hasn't been farmed before for 3 continuous years, and they base it on, like mine was based on like 2013 through 15. is what they went back to. So if it was row cropped 13, 14, and 15, then I could enroll it. So yeah, I'm sure there might be some minimum, but
well, so for instance,
that small, no one's going to farm it anyway.
For instance, and you know, this is the reason we're having all these conversations about buying back ag and stuff is, you know, I don't want to create a bad, I don't want to like have done this contract with a farmer and then, you know, start over the years kind of going back on it. But, you know, I do want to do what's right for our property. And so like there's a specific field, I want to say it's like 6 or 8 acres it's a part of that lease. And it just sets up absolutely perfect to take out. It's a secluded little hidden field that would work to take out and put into CRP if it was eligible.
Yeah.
So Chris, you obviously, I mean, that's a big change to that farm that you've been hunting for quite a while, right? Removing the crops out of it and putting it in CRP. I guess what are you anticipating at least? Are you trying to counter that with more food plots? Do you think that it's going to change patterns on the property
He's anticipating
a lot?
killing booners is what he's anticipating.
Oh, I've already got yelled at once for saying it. So,
well, not everyone.
You know, there's still plenty of ag around my farm, and like for instance, like right north of me, that guy's on the same crop rotation that I'm on. So like when I'm planting 7 acres of corn this year, he's gonna have 7 acres of corn to the north. When I'm planting 7 acres of beans next year, he'll have 7 acres of beans, or sorry, not 7. He'll have like 100 acres of beans to the north. So those deer will really summer on his more than mine. And plus I'm fairly active on my farm. You know, I know a lot of guys buy a farm and they're kind of hands off, but I've worked my butt off to get this place, and I got a lot of work to do to it still. So I'm out there quite a bit in the spring and the summer. My kids are out there quite a bit, and then we kind of get off of it in September. So I'm not too concerned with them like eating me out of house and home in the summer. Really adding those native grasses wasn't just for the whitetails. I love to hear pheasants and see pheasants and quail, and that's what I grew up doing. That was like that's how I started hunting, was pheasant hunting and quail hunting with my dad. And we saw where Iowa went from like one of the best places in the world to pheasant hunt and quail hunt, and to where it's like horrible. And now we're starting to see an uptrend again. So we did enroll. This is the second year of CRP on some of it, and we actually have pheasants on it now. And then adding all of this extra CRP is going to help. We've been trapping nest predators.
I was going to ask that
the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yep. And I hear all kinds of stuff on that, but as far as what will it help or not, but I can promise you unless it's just a random coincidence that as soon as we started that, we started seeing more poults.
Yeah.
I heard my first bobwhite quail here.
I saw that video.
Yeah. So that was really awesome. I've got whippoorwills that I'm hearing now. I never heard them.
So what do you think
first when I moved here?
I mean, you've got obviously the nest predators. Do you think a lot of it is, you know, and it's no fault of the farmers, but just continual conversion to ag that's taken away habitat for these different species? In terms of why their numbers
that's what it was. That's what it was for pheasants and quail. I wouldn't say that's what it would be for like the whippoorwill and whatnot. I always hear that whippoorwill, and like these whippoorwills around me, they're always in the timber here. And I'm not an expert on that. I'm not a biologist. I don't know where the heck they typically live, but that's what I've noticed. I think that's just like a snowball effect. I mean, I know when Iowa started having big declines in that bird population, CRP contracts started expiring, and corn prices and bean prices were skyrocketing. And that's why guys weren't re-enrolling. So there was a ton of habitat loss.
Yep.
There's a lot of clean farming practices that happen now that never used to happen. Every ditch is mowed, every waterway is mowed, every fence line is taken out. It's literally a snowball effect of a lot of variables, but in my mind, I'm telling myself that I will control any variable I can. And that's why, you know, getting rid of nest predators, planting more native grasses, doing edge feathering, doing TSI, having timber logged. I mean, there's a variety of things, but Jared, to answer your question, I guess we kind of went all over the board there. I anticipate that it's going to make my farm a lot better for whitetail hunting too. It's going to make my entry and exit better, but overall, like, it's going to add bedding. These CRP mixes, you know, they got a lot of food in them. They really do. A lot of different forbs in them that I'll see deer like out my backyard. I can see part of those fields, and they're out there feeding in that CRP planting every single night.
Well, that's huge, man. I mean, we've talked so much about switchgrass, and like it seems like it's a no-brainer, except like, a lot of guys say they won't bet in it because there's no food.
It's just a monoculture.
And so like, why are we even talking about it if there's like CRP mixes that have that food element to it? I don't really understand.
I think that some of it's
is there switchgrass in that CRP?
Yeah, in mixes. Yeah, because it's a warm season grasses. Yeah.
Does it not stand as does it not have as much structure as?
No.
It does. It does pretty good. Like it doesn't. I wouldn't say it does as good as switch.
Correct.
But I mean, it does pretty good, especially if you get the right mix. There's a bunch of mixes out there.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of options that you can do. So just when you get the options from the NRCS of what you can plant, then you decide on. Like CP25 is awesome here in the Midwest right now. There's options within CP25. So call someone who understands.
I've got a guy,
in
Ohio. He's actually dropping off the no-till drill, like the county drill, for me tomorrow. So I may talk to him about it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm trying to pull up right now what percent of this. I'll tell you.
Because the switch has a much more defined structure to it, right?
Yeah.
When you have like these blue stems and things like that, these bunch grasses a lot of times they're not for bedding, right? It's for diversity of these areas, and then it's also for bunch grasses for a lot of this nesting to happen and use on the ground. Basically have bare dirt and then bunch grasses, bare dirt, bunch grasses. So you don't have as much structure, but I mean, let's put it this way. If where Chris is at, he gets a 2-foot snow in the middle of winter, right? I don't care if you have a full stand of switchgrass. Like, that stuff's laying over. Like, I mean, it won't be able to stand up through there at first. It'll lay over with that heavy snow, and it eventually will come back. Well, so will the CRP in that standpoint. But
what could you expect out of that CRP stand? Like, in a realistic...
Similar.
Well, in a realistic, I mean, dude, we don't get 2 foot of snow. The most we've ever got in the past 5 years has been like 6 inches.
It would stand most of the time.
Yeah.
Yep. Stay most of the time. And you would have that food aspect.
One thing that we always got to remember whenever we're talking to people about anything to do with habitat and whatever else, right, is that we all have our own opinions, and maybe we've done things that worked or didn't work, and every area is different though too. So I think, as to your point, Jared, like, what works in Southern Iowa, maybe if you go to Minnesota, like, it's not going to work as well.
Yeah. And I assume primarily because of like climate and soils and maybe snow, but less and less. I mean, we've just really been, and I can't remember, Chris, how long it's been since we had you on, but I did a big, I called it like an old field restoration project where I didn't plant anything. I basically had, it wasn't eligible for CRP because it was just old pasture. Farmer didn't want to farm it because it's kind of sparsed around, but I had 25 acres that we took out of, it was just old fescue, and like it would be good in the spring. It was awesome fawning cover. But then by October, it literally was like a 6-inch tall mat of fescue, and it was just useless. So we went out. Yeah. I had talked to, I think Craig Harper was probably the main influence for how I went about that. We went in October, once all the broadleaves were dormant, and sprayed with glyphosate, like all of it, 25 acres. Shortly thereafter, went in and put in breaks around a bunch of different sections, and then we burned it off in February. Mm-hmm. And I tilled most of it, like in April, just turned it all over. And that's where we're at with it. Interesting results, because there was a section that I didn't till, and it seems to be bouncing back faster, like just the seed bed that was in it, which I thought would be the opposite. But that's what we did with that. And now I'm starting to turn my attention to these other parts of the farm that have been farmed and are eligible for CRP. And it's like, how do we, what's the right approach for bringing bedding to a predominantly ag and pasture, environment?
Yeah, without reducing all of your income too from the family side.
Yeah, of course.
Which is where CRP is attractive.
Right. Yeah, huge.
So looking at this seed tag, you guys, this has 9% switchgrass in it.
Yeah, there you go.
It's got 25% big blue stem, 20% Indian grass, and then quite a few different
wildflowers and forbs and stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff like that.
Yep.
Milkweed, coneflower.
Yep. all good stuff. So yeah, I mean,
It's got some clover in it.
There's a lot of food in that. There's structure in that. There's also a lot of deer food in that. So I mean, that's where, I think people throw the term CRP around a lot, right? Like think about people driving in the middle of Kansas and are like, "Oh, look at that CRP field."
Yeah,
it's not a CRP field, right? It could be a stand of switchgrass, could just be fallow pasture. Like,
well, CRP is the name of a program, right? That's
correct.
A conservation restoration program. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's just kind of a blanket term.
Conservation
reserve program.
Reserve program. Gotcha.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's a blanket term, but but when people see that, they're like, oh, he
CRP.
came out of the CRP,
yeah.
right? And so I think the reason that CRP is laid out in a way, to Chris's point, is it's coming back and creating habitat and soil stability in a lot of these places that traditionally in ag have been, it's really, it is habitat, but a lot of it is the soil conservation, right? It's the erosion factor and the organic matter factor and everything that goes with it. So, CRP has a huge role in the health of the soil, which in turn has, dramatic effects on all types of wildlife, obviously including deer. Now, I think the big advantage to like true CRP, per Chris's tag there, is a deer will lay in that and they can get up, they can eat, they can move around. There's thermal cover, right? There's seclusion in there. You don't see that with monoculture plantings like a switch.
How are we just now having this? Where have our followers been? How's nobody told us, like, dude, you guys are talking about CRP?
Well, but the thing that you'll hear, and I disagree with this greatly.
They won't come out of it.
Well, yeah.
Because
there's food in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. They just want to be able to get up and eat and move around. They'll get up and move. They will go to a destination source, or they'll go to a food plot and check for does. They're not going to just stay in there, right? But it is those are the true areas where I call them like ghost bucks, where you're like scanning fields. You look back and there's this buck standing in the middle of the field. You're like, where the hell did he come? He was in there. He's laying in there the whole time.
So it has the structure. Absolutely, you would expect in a CRP field like you planted to provide bedding, like a.
No doubt.
How tall is that stuff? Like in October, November?
It's gonna be
6 foot.
Yeah, I was
4, 5, 6 foot.
You can get 6 foot tall
in a couple years here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like Cole
some...
Nelson, and who I bought my seed from, and he was sending me so many photos of different CRP plantings that he's done, because he not only sells it, but he actually plants it too.
Yeah.
Manages a lot of farms, and that's one thing too to think about, right? Like we can talk about switchgrass or whatever else, but if you don't manage it appropriately, you're never going to get its full potential.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
So a lot of guys, like a lot of farmers around here, if they enroll something, it's like, oh, throw some seed down and bye, see ya.
Yeah.
As long as I'm not going to go throw some beans or corn in that, no one's going to say anything.
Yep.
Well, they do halfway through when you let it grow up into a bunch of trees and stuff. But no, he's got example after example that he showed me. I've hunted farms that had the same exact mix that had 4 to 6 foot tall grass, and it is really cool. And I'm not going to say that it's going to withstand snowfall as well as switchgrass. I'm not going to say that. I want to have more than just that switchgrass one monoculture there, and I know some people would disagree with me, and that's fine. I want to have a mix, and I'm doing this more than just for whitetails as well. There's a lot of reasons I'm doing this, and where I live, we, knock on wood, we just don't get the snowfall like we used to.
Same.
We don't
really
either,
don't. Dude, it's like how many times as a kid, I was born in 86, and it's like, I remember every Christmas it was a white Christmas.
Yeah.
There was snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Now it's like my kids don't even see that.
I remember
we might have snow, but
multiple like 2 foot snows that like closed school down for a week plus at a time. And it's like,
dude, one time I could be wrong because I was a kid, but we got like 4 foot of snow.
It was back to back. It's like 92 or 93.
Well, I was born in 93. That was a bad one. But when I was like in
you were born,
elementary
it was
school.
bad.
Yeah. When I was in elementary school or I can remember they shut school down for like a week, and we literally had to
we had like
shovel out of our drive, like to be able to walk anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We don't have any.
We were tubing on the roads. Like, so all the roads were obviously shut down. So we had a ranger pulling a tube and just like cracking off a mailbox.
And none of that. I mean, if we get 6 inches, it's like, whoa. Good, let us know.
We went over and we're shoveling my buddy. This is an old German lady shoveling her roof for her because like everybody's worried about the roof falling in. And I just pushed him off the roof, and he just fell like 6 feet onto the snow. He couldn't get out, but
Didn't we lock you in a dumpster?
she said, "Cody, you're shoveling the shingles. You're shoveling my shingles."
Go back in there, you old lady. Yeah, I mean, I think that when you start to look at what you're trying to create, and here's the other thing, and we've all talked about this, even though you've got a lot of ag, and Chris, you do too, you've also got a ton of woods that you guys are doing TSI work in for cover and for bedding as well, right? And so it's like, you know, especially as we get into the wintertime, those deer are going to be wanting to hammer browse at that point, right? So, I mean, yeah, they're going to use the fields and stuff, but they're going to want to be able to hammer that browse as close to possible, and, you know, so feathering those edges of those CRP fields and dropping those trees. I mean, that's huge on that side.
Chris, what a conundrum that, yes, it's like, it seems like a no-brainer that you're like, oh, I would just follow these trees out into my CRP field and it would be the most amazing bedding of all time. But then how do you burn it?
Yeah.
Chris is like, I just light it.
He's like, what do you mean? Just burn it.
I just burn it. And I burn my timber too. So
it'll stop at the next farm.
Yeah. Well, dude, there's
we've got like a big creek that, and those timber burns here, they don't like go too crazy. Usually it's fairly slow, but I just did my first timber burn this year because I've got my work cut out for me, you guys. I've got so much honeysuckle that's growing up on this farm, and that stuff is like so invasive, and it just takes over. So
we have multiflora out here. Does
multiflora is the big one.
It's
it just chokes everything else out. Yeah, I mean, it's just hard. I mean, that's when you start to look at this stuff and you're like, you know, Chris, obviously you're in a new farm. I have a new farm. You're making huge jumps. It's like, first of all, there's only so much time in the day, you know, and all three of us are sitting here. I guarantee we all have
in the year in your lifetime. And it's like,
we all have big plans, and it's like, what are you going to chew off this year to actually do right? Because if you just try to do it all, it's going to be sloppy and it's not going to work out.
But if you don't do it at some point, it'll never happen.
It'll never happen.
So there's somewhere in between.
Yeah. Definitely got to grit it out and just chip away at it when you can.
I think that's it, is just
when the opportunity presents itself, I think and do your best to be ready for
just
it.
Little bits at a time. Like those timber cuts are huge. You make a big timber cut, it'll change the property.
Well, those are the unexpected income from land ownership. Is like, that's something that nobody can really prepare for. Like, you know, people that hit it big with oil and gas, or, you know, more recently some solar stuff, and like timber for sure is more well known. It's like, but some of that stuff, like, you just never see coming, or like it's hard to foresee, and when it happens, it's like, good thing I bought land.
Yeah, I mean, I had talked to a guy not too long ago. He had like 10 acres, but his 10 acres was the entrance to one of the main mine shafts for coal, and so the coal company paid him $250,000 just to access whatever 3,000 feet under his property. And it was like, he's like, I didn't know it was like that.
It's frustrating from the outside looking in, because it's like, how would you ever have known that? You know, it's like, I would have bought that property if I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, he had no
I could have
idea.
got it for $10,000. You know, it's like,
he's just like, yeah, it was great. So now I'm buying a bigger one. You know, and so they're out there. And I mean, I think that's when, because people listening to this all the time will say, well, you know, land's just crazy. Like, there are no more deals. Chris, I think number one, you took probably the best step in that the majority of your purchases were private sales. Which, no offense to us as realtors, but by the time it hits the market, the demand has gone up, the price has gone up. Mm-hmm. Just, it's a fact. You know, if you have a neighbor, or you are leasing a property or whatever, at some point, if you can make a private transaction happen, that will be the best deal that you're going to get on the market, period.
Yeah.
No arguments there.
Yep.
So, but
I agree.
You just have to be confident enough to have that discussion, and you have to be ready. You can't go to the farmer and say, hey, would you sell this? And he says yes, and you're like, okay, call me in 10 years. Like, you know, you have to be ready to buy the damn thing if you're going to ask if he's going to sell it.
For sure. And I think one thing to think about too is that, you know, when we talk about getting like a deal on land, unless you're really like literally planning on turning around and flipping it and selling it tomorrow, then we've seen over time, I mean, it just appreciates. There's just more demand for it than there's ever been. So as long as you can get it at what you believe is a fair price and take care of it, you're going to get your money back at minimum. And if you're going to hold
yeah.
it for a while, then you never know when you're going to hit that next big bump. So
Yeah.
it is such a solid and safe investment. But you have the ability to really do something when you get it. And, like right now, we're talking about land and buying land, and like my wife and I, we've been thinking about maybe trying to buy like a rental house. So we're looking at things like that. And I'll tell you, like we went and looked at a house yesterday. I mean, not like there's like different rules you follow that I've been reading about and looking at, but like we go look at this house, and dude, it is like so out of my realm of knowing what the hell I'm doing with it.
Yes.
So like on paper, I'm like, okay, I can buy this house at this price. If I can rent it for this price, then that fits the mold. But then like, what happens with I have to deal with a tenant now. And then I'm looking at this house yesterday, and I'm like, okay, has this, all of a sudden the city implemented a new rental code for renters. If it's your secondary home, then now it has to be up to the city's renting code.
Jeez.
So how much money is that going to cost? So I don't know. I would say I'm going to probably stick with
Not
land.
looking good.
Well, I mean,
I told Alex at 3 left, I'm like, dude, I don't even want to go down that road. I don't think right now.
Hey, Jeremy's got some landlord experience.
Well, yeah,
pretty good for you.
I just stroked a check for $3,000 for a new HVAC system as we were on this podcast. Welcome to landlordship.
Not for a landlord.
Yeah,
You're a
for me,
slumlord,
for this
Jeremy.
place.
Oh, for here.
Yeah, I just put in a $3,000 HVAC system.
Yeah.
Yay!
Right off.
There goes my rent. Yeah, but I mean, the hard part is because I've had that same. Yes, I have been a landlord before. I've had that same discussion with my wife, and it's like the numbers make sense. Like even this office building, like somebody pays me per month to rent part of this office building, and that's great, and it helps cover my mortgage payments for it. That said, I don't want to be a landlord, or things like that happen, or I have to replace the roof. And I know that in most cases, land doesn't produce like that, right? I don't necessarily have a monthly income unless I've got some CRP or crop, but it's nominal usually depending on the size of the land. But there always could be a big timber cut, or oil and gas, or again, if I want to flip it, I hold it for 3 years. Odds are I'm making 10% on that thing probably after 3 years of holding the right property, especially if I put some improvements into it. So, I mean, the returns are there from land. And to your point, Chris, I feel way more secure about it. Because I walk on a property and I'm like, this is a banging deer hunting property. That's good timber. I could plant this, or the farmer could plant this. I just feel like I know those things. Whereas if you put me on a house, it's what if the septic is shit and I got to redo it for literally for $30,000, or this roof needs replaced, or this tenant doesn't pay their rent, or in my case it was they smoke crack. Like now,
I don't know anything about it. Yeah. Margie's like, how do we fix this? And I'm just like hammer, and I'm like,
yeah, and it's just and transparently, I'm not handy either. Like I don't want to do that stuff. I don't want to have to
it's a
rebuild
time commitment,
stuff.
and it's like it's even more so because we don't know what we're doing. So like you'd rather just stroke a check. And if you just have one rental, it's like it's hard to make money that way.
Eat your margins up.
Right.
Where I think on the land side, I firmly believe, and it's not going to be everywhere, right? So Nick can quote me for as much as he wants, but I firmly believe in a lot of places, if you're paying $4,000 to $5,000 per acre, by 2033, so 10 years from now, you're going to be paying $700 to $7,500 per acre, no doubt in my mind. It just that's what it'll be. And it's just because it is literally a limited resource. They're not making any more land. It is continually going away. It's continually getting subdivided. The demand will drive this thing to where, mine and Chris's kids may be holding on to property that's worth 6 times as much as we paid for it. And because if you look at it now, like our grandparents probably
absolutely happened.
Yeah, our grandparents probably paid 10 times less than we're paying for land right now.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
It's wild.
You think it's that much?
I mean, you look in
I know it's relative because like the value of money has changed too. I'm curious in terms of real value. Like,
I know. A couple of the people I talked to in Iowa, at least back in the '60s and stuff, they were paying $400 an acre.
Well, sure, but they were also paying
actually
a
in the
nickel
90s.
'90s they were paying $400 an acre.
Yeah, so like one of my good friends, he started buying land in '93, and that was in Monroe County, which is like 3 miles south of here. He owns 3,200 acres now, 8 miles south of me. It's all continuous for the most part. He started buying it in '93, and I'll never forget the story. He told me that he lived up in Iowa City. He saw in the Des Moines Register that there was a farm for sale in Monroe County, and it was 700 acres, and they were asking 275 for it. So
Whoa.
he $275 an acre. So he called the.
I thought you said $275,000.
I was like, sold. Sold.
Well, let's do the math on that. I mean, it might. I don't know. Okay, so 700.
That's like 15 grand, right?
192K.
Wow.
But it was so here's the thing. There's been a lot change right since then. But to finish my story is he called the realtor, didn't get an answer. It was
Surprise.
on like a towards a weekend. Realtor didn't answer. No one was in the office. So then the following Tuesday, the realtor calls back and they start talking about it. He drives down, looks at it with his wife, decides, hey, let's put an offer in on this at $225 an acre and see if they accept it. Calls and it was a widow that was selling it that wanted to move to Arizona to live with their sister. So calls the realtor back, says, we'll do it for 225. Realtor calls him back, says, nope, she's not moving off 275. Like 3 or 4 weeks go by. He kind of just doesn't even it's off the table now. He thinks it's done. Realtor calls him. So we're talking like 3 to 4 weeks later.
Nobody wanted it.
Him and says, hey, would you do 250? Wow. And he goes, yeah, I would do 250. So that first 7 acres he bought for $80,000
for 700 acres. That in today's standards probably worth what? Close to $2 million.
Well,
700 acres down there. I mean, you're looking at that's 6,000. That's like 5,500 acre ground all day.
So over $3 million.
Well, what would that 180,000 equate to, like in today's money?
I mean, from '93, it's not that much. I mean, maybe 250. I mean, it's not that.
I don't know. I'm not an economist. I don't know exactly how inflation.
You think so?
That.
I think so.
I mean, '93 was 30 years ago.
What would be another? What can we base that off of? Just
that Nick can look it up. Nick, look at
what would $1 in '93 be today?
There you go.
We like overloading, Nick.
He's like a quarter. No,
multiply by pi, and then find the square root.
I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's crazy what these prices have done. But to your point, Jeremy, there's also a demand that is happening now that we've never seen.
Absolutely.
It's a progression on privatization too, because my dad, I still won't forget this story either. It would have been like mid '90s, and my dad and my 2 uncles, his 2 brothers, they went and looked at a 240 acre farm, and I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but like clearly it would have been probably $400 an acre back then, $500 an acre in mid '90s in Southern Iowa. And they went and looked at it, decided they were going to all pool in their money and buy it. We had Sunday dinners every single Sunday. So they come back, and me and my grandpa, we're all sitting there. I'm all excited, like, oh, they're going to buy a farm, and they start talking about it. And my grandpa goes, why the hell are you guys going to spend your money on a farm to go shoot a deer or a turkey when you can literally hunt wherever you want? Why are you going to do that? Because at the time there was literally like no one thought of it as a good investment. It was just rough ground, and you could hunt anywhere. Yeah. You could literally hunt anywhere you wanted. So why would you spend your money? Well, now look at it. Yeah. Now it's completely different. You can go and you can knock on 100 doors
and get shut down.
You're not going to get.
And I mean, that's only, I mean, I say it, it's Jared's age, but it's only 30 years ago. It's not that long ago in terms of how things have changed. I mean, so 30 years ago, so basically every 10 years, this thing has basically, tripled or more. Like that's what it would have been. It would have went to 1,200, then it went to 3,600. Now it's 6 to 7.
93. 30 years ago.
Did you find an app? Is there an app for that?
There's a website. $2.13.
Okay, so double.
Yeah.
More.
A little more than double.
It's 110%.
Yeah.
So 180.
So it'd be $400,000.
$381,600.
So 400,000. But that farm's now worth $3 million.
The farm's
Yeah.
worth $4 million.
And
all
how
day.
big was the farm?
700
700 acres.
So
and a 5,500
divided
an
by
acre.
700. So I don't know. Today's money, I'm not sure why I'm doing this, but $545
Dollars per acre.
per acre.
Yeah, so that's a 10
In
time.
today's money.
Yeah, it's a 10-time return on investment because it's
Oh,
$5,500 today. Like an actual.
It's not
dollars
just,
per-
and it's not just hunters that are driving this price up either.
No, I mean
it's
that's
not just
man.
because, like I just said, like, well, guys, it's privatization, and that is there's 200 acres literally right down the road from me that my neighbor who owns that, he hunts a little bit, but honestly, he's out there riding 4-wheelers and fishing most of the time. That's what they do. They ride quads on weekends. They want to get out of Des Moines.
I was gonna say it's space at this point. People just don't. I mean, look at these cities. These cities are bleeding out left and right because people don't want to live on top of each other anymore.
They don't want to live on top of each other, and they don't want to deal with the crazy high taxes and
exactly.
stupid ass crime rates we deal with. And just the mentality that a lot of people have. This is their escape to get away from that.
Why not? I mean, Jared and I sell 20-acre build lots like they're going out of style because people just want space and they don't want to be in the city where crime rates are astronomical and taxes are through the roof. That's it. That's all they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Exactly. And how many people back then, like I look at it as like how many people not only could go get permission to go do these things wherever they wanted, but then also how many people had a family farm? How many people that they could go to the family farm to do this on grandma and grandpa's farm, and that's a lot of that stuff's changed hands and
subdivided
A
down.
lot of reasons for that. Yep, a lot of reasons for all of that stuff, but there's more demand than ever.
I don't see it changing either. I mean,
it
again,
just blows my mind to sit there and like think though that like, but if you would ask me in 2020 or 2019, if I thought that land in Iowa would be like rec ground down here would be selling for $6,000 an acre, I'd have been like, there's no way. There is no way it would. And now, if you have a primo rec farm, right? And there's obviously a lot of variables in this, but if you have a primetime rec farm that has a history of good deer, that has good access, good entry and exit, good neighborhood, that's literally what it's going to bring. Unless it's some crazy ass acre, crazy big parcel. And then the small parcels, if you have a small parcel, let's say 40 acres, in a really good neighborhood, then you're looking at $7,000 to $7,500 an acre. If you go up to Northeast Iowa, those guys have been paying these prices for 6, 7, 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And those prices continue to go up there. So I don't know what to think. Like, I'm with you, Jeremy, that 10 years from now, like as a landowner, now that I finally got in the game, like I obviously want to see my investment grow.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we had that crystal ball so we could see where it's going to be at. But one thing that I will say is that like, everybody is always, there's a very like a normal trend, or I guess a normal statement that I've seen over the years. And that is people that say, I wish I would have bought that farm 20 years ago, or I wish I would have bought that place then, or whatever. But it was a little bit high. Like, no offense to my uncle, love the guy to death. He has told me for over 20 years now, oh man, I should have bought that farm. I should have bought that farm when it was for sale then.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are the people that will continue to sit there and say those things instead of just making the sacrifices and jumping in and seeing what happens next. It's if history repeats itself, and then, like one thing that I would say is like, unless I'm not going to get too worried about it unless the whitetail deer just completely goes away. They get some crazy disease and they all die. That would be really bad.
Yeah, that would crash land prices.
That'd be bad for land values.
It'd crash land prices in a lot of places.
Dude, this is kind of a real weird side comment, but like, what's crossed my mind a few times when you talk about like they're not making any more land. It seems like what crosses my mind is like the Neuralink thing, or even ties into our conversation this morning about the entertainment addiction and just plugging into like TikTok. It just seems like the only thing that would, other than a devastation of a resource like that in a state like Iowa, on the other side, one thing that would like decrease land values is like the lack of a necessity for acreage to do anything. Like if people were just plugged into
they weren't
a
going
virtual
anywhere.
reality, you know, like you know, where it's like acreage is no longer required. There's just very few people at that point who, you know, and that's not obviously, I don't think happening
in our
right now,
lifetimes.
or, you know, and that's not something that you and I
hope not.
would
Yeah, no
subscribe to,
shit.
but like something like that would be a drastic, like, hey, there's no need for land or space anymore.
I mean, shit, at this point, I think
We'll
it'll
just
go
upload.
the other way, which will be there'll be a damn civil war breakout, and everybody better have their own piece of ground to hold tight to before probably that, you know, plugged in, we're all stuck and stacked in cities. Because it just seems like we're flooding out of that right now. I mean, COVID kicked everybody out of that. You know, it was like, oh, the cool things to live in the city and have this 1-bedroom studio flat. And like now it's like nobody wants to do that.
Dude, people are quick to forget. People already forgot about COVID. It's like, they're like, okay, back to
The sheep did.
yeah, that's 90% of people.
You know, they're right back in. And it's not just COVID. It's just like, look at the freedom you got for a year. And I know, like, it was not so much thinking around like the
Well, guess
lockdown
what,
side
dude?
of things.
People don't want freedom. They want security.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's what's so sad about America.
I don't.
We're just super dependent on a lot. Even us that, you know, we are out there doing what we do, right? A lot of guys that we hang out with, we can go get our own food. We can go do a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that like we do today that we're relying on that our grandpas and grandmas or great grandpa and grandmas, like they didn't have that. They didn't have, you know, what happens if the electric grid goes out in the United States?
Yeah.
Do you know how many people would be dead within a week or two?
Oh yeah.
Like they would be dead. They would
No
not
microwave.
know what to do. There would literally be they couldn't cook food. They couldn't get food. What if something happens with the water? What are these people gonna do? Like
It's funny how, you know, I feel this way about like the stock. Like I don't know shit about the stock market. Like when somebody says, "Hey, put your money here," I'm like, "Oh, okay." But
I get the monthly statements. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. But then when somebody says, "Hey, what do you think about this piece of land?" Like, I'm in. I'm locked on. I'll give you my opinion of value on it, or I'll tell you if it's worth it or not.
It's because you know it. You're good at it. You know, you're passionate about it. We just, you know.
I just don't see it in like our lifetime or even our kids' lifetime, the value of land depreciating. Unless, like, to your point, Chris, I mean, if something happened in the whitetail world, like if CWD wiped deer off the face of the earth, that would affect recreational values and land values significantly.
Yeah.
It would, because that is carrying a lot of the things. Yeah.
Right.
Or, I mean, even if you know, the DNR does something stupid and it causes, you know, a massive, you know, runoff in terms of like the quality of hunting or whatever it might be, that will affect. I mean, we talked about that in Buffalo County. They've got CWD. They're going to have this giant, like, unlimited tag, you know, kill up there. I would assume that the values in Buffalo County and surrounding counties decrease dramatically from that. I think it's inevitable.
I would think so. Yeah.
Right? I mean, because that's why people are buying it, is for the recreational opportunity of hunting, you know, famed Buffalo County and seeing big deer. Well, if all of a sudden people are shooting everything that walks, that decreases, so does the land value. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well. But for me, I'm shooting that RX-5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX-7. And I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and, you know, killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt.
For the sake of throwing it out there, we talk about like the state of Ohio. I really do think from a baiting perspective, Ohio is one of the most whatever, controversial or most affected by that regulation.
Probably because the number of hunters too.
Number of hunters and smaller parcel sizes compared to a lot of the Midwestern states. Man, like if they would ban baiting, like I just think that the recreational value in Ohio would just skyrocket.
So I think they will, right? And it's because of what Chris just said there. If deer wipe out in the state of Ohio, land prices will plummet.
Yeah,
I mean,
and on the opposite end, if they got rid of baiting, which
which
I think
they're
would
gonna need
which I
to.
think would massively help the age structure, would spike the property values.
They're going to need to in order to protect that herd from CWD, whether it's next year or 5 years from now. It's coming.
So much opportunity in the state of Ohio.
And so it will go up. And I mean, Iowa's already kind of protected themselves with, number one, the limitation of hunters coming in and out of that state, but also no baiting and
I
things
wanted
like
to talk
that.
about that a little bit before I assume, Chris, you got to go here at some point. But do you know Skip Sly? Did you happen to catch our
I
podcast
know
with
him
him?
really
Yes,
well.
Chris connected me with Skip.
Oh,
when we
okay.
initially talked.
Perfect. Oh, that's right. Yeah, because I saw some video he put out. And
Yep.
I appreciate that connection. What do you think about? I mean, I guess that Bow Hunters Association thing is what I was going to ask about. Like, you know, some of the regulation stuff that he's involved, and you know, we were trying to translate that to like what we're dealing with here, mainly in Ohio. But it just seems like he's freaking paving
He's
away.
awesome.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he is. He does a good job. You know, like Skip is very vocal on keeping Iowa great. And I think what it's done is it's really every year Iowa is under attack, right? Like, I mean, every year we get these crazy bills from these lobbyists that are pushing these bills that you guys talked about it already, that are going to ruin the state very quickly. Iowa's not just a full state of great whitetail habitat. So we limit our tags because we have limited resource and we want to keep it really good. It's not about the money. It's about the resource. And I think that's why like a guy like Skip, who's vocal, joining the IBA, who has lobbyists that are fighting for us, is important. And then actually, I just got invited, speaking of that, to a group in Missouri. There's a bunch of bow hunters in Missouri that are all banding together to change some laws there. There are residents in Missouri that are going to change the laws, not necessarily as far as like saying, hey, we don't want non-residents, but they want to change some laws to limit non-residents to $1.
Yeah.
They want to change law to
November gun
they
season.
want to propose to change the gun season.
Yeah, they want
November
December.
to December.
Yeah.
So I think that's us as hunters. Like, if you live in an area, because family is most important to me. I was lucky to just be born in Southern Iowa. If I was born somewhere else, I had my family that I have around me now, I wouldn't leave to move to Iowa or move to a state that has really big deer. I wouldn't do it because my family is the most important thing to me. So if you live in one of the states, you do have a voice. You just gotta get the right people involved, and you can change those rules. And that's one thing I think that Skip's really opened a lot of people's eyes to, is that just because the local DNR, and they're not even the ones that are necessarily making the rules, they're being told, right? So like,
that's it.
There's ways to change it to make your states better.
I think and I mean, we've seen that a little bit. Well, Missouri was one where, you know, at one point it was $3. It was a $3 state, and they killed that off a few years back down to $2. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear. I think what happens is, you know, hunters jump quickly on the DNR or Game Commission here, whatever it is.
We're guilty of it.
Yeah, we are too. And ultimately, it's not them, right? It's the state legislator that's controlling everything, and the lobby is connected to that. Sure, there's input from them, but you know, far often it's too little, too late. Yeah, great. We heard you. We don't care.
Yeah, they're just enforcing it. They don't make the law.
I don't make the rules. I just enforce the law.
Yeah, and I think that when that happens, you know, to the far end of it is money drives it at that point. When it comes down to these lobbyists and what's going to get passed, it's all a money game to push that stuff through and push those agendas through. So, you know, nothing out there is going to scare a state legislature or a DNR into making a big change like baiting in Ohio, unless it's like very realized. The fact that real estate values could drop dramatically if CWD becomes a major issue in the state, that's something that the state legislatures are instantly going to grab on from an economic standpoint. They don't care that it makes bigger bucks. They don't give a shit about that.
Sure.
But they would care if all of a sudden that would potentially remove a major factor that could hurt the deer resource, which is bringing in so much money to the state via real estate prices and everything else
and
hunting
it's
related.
a complicated one to try to wrap your head around, because it's like, with the improvement of like an age structure, we feel as bow hunters and trophy deer hunters that would increase the land values. But there's also a negative effect in that some gun hunters would be like, well, that's the only reason I went to Missouri.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one to. Same with Ohio baiting, right?
Sure.
Those are tough to, I think, fully understand.
Yep. No, I think it definitely is. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that they have to consider that, but frankly, it comes down to who does the best convincing.
How do I convince Iowa to take one of the 3 resident tags and give it to me personally?
Residents get 2. Unless you're a landowner, then you get 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Spoiled brats.
Right.
Well,
You guys just need to move here.
That's what everybody says.
Same deal, dude. We got family and business here. I can't
know.
leave
We're
them.
coming. 2024.
We have 5 points right now.
Yep.
So you would draw this year?
Next year. We just bought our 5th point.
Yep.
Oh, you just okay.
So we're putting in for 24.
Nice.
Yeah. Exciting.
Well, that'll be fun. You guys will love it.
Yeah, we've been
You'll
talking.
realize why it's a special place and why it's important that we keep the laws.
Dude, I'm going to be. It'll be a spiritual experience.
I mean, I think
Spirit of the wild.
I think the thing is,
and hey, you got to put your money where your mouth's at. You're gonna have to kill a booner.
I know. I'm gonna have to.
Said you kill a booner every year.
I would have go on record as Jeremy said that.
There's a good chance that I'll be divorced at the end of 24 because I'm gonna say, listen,
just trying to live up to his word.
I'm going to Iowa on October 1st, and I'm not coming home until I kill a booner. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
So
I hope you kill a giant, man.
You're
gonna have an awesome hunt.
I mean, dude, the thing is, and we kind of rag on Kansas a little bit now, although we're going back and we're excited about it. It's just we want to go where deer hunting, it's tough or it's limited or whatever, because the experience there compared to what we experience almost every day in our home state or some of the other states we hunt, it's a complete different elevation, right? Like anybody you've taken from, like when I took my dad from Pennsylvania to Kansas, and like one of the first mornings he saw like 8 bucks and 3 mature bucks chasing one doe, and he's like, what the hell is this? I'm like, this is the rut in the Midwest. It's just a different ball game. And until you experience that, you don't really get it. The problem is you can't have that all the time. Everybody can't have that experience all the time, or that experience doesn't exist anymore, right? It's a limited resource. So there has to be some barrier to entry, right? In the case of Iowa, it's very steep for non-residents. Kansas is somewhat steep, maybe every year, maybe every other year, right? But is it such a bad thing? Probably not. In terms of what you get to experience when you finally cross that barrier and you're in it. Now you got to make it count too when you finally draw.
I kind of said that this morning when I talk about Iowa is an isolated example of that, but like I think one of the main reasons that Jeremy and I are so obsessed with bow hunting deer, like even maybe to a level where I would argue some people in the Midwest might not be able to understand. Not to take away from their passion at all, your passion even, Chris, but it's like we don't live in a big buck state. We live in a state where it's like it's such a finite amount of the season or of our lifetimes that we get to go even to a place where big deer live. And so when that happened, the whole thing, dude, like when Jeremy and I crossed the Kansas line, it's like I'm just like in heaven. It's just like, dude, what is better than this, And I would argue that's difficult for somebody that lives in the state of Kansas or of Iowa or whatever to fully grasp. It's the same concept of like, somebody that it's easy to kill a deer even from childhood, right? Mm-hmm. That same example where it's like, how could you understand it without the extreme struggle?
Yeah.
I think there's some of that going on with us as Pennsylvanians.
Yeah. No, I think that's a big point.
Yeah, I agree. And I've said, like, honestly, because I talk to enough people with the work that I do, that I talk to people from all over the country that whitetail hunt. And I see the struggles that a lot of people face in a lot of other states, just with the amount of hunters, with the smaller parcels, just with the terrain, all of those things. So yes, we are more than I don't even want to say spoiled. We're more than fortunate to live and hunt here. And I've told people that if I had to go and for whatever, if I had to just like uproot my family and move to where, let's say like you guys are at in Pennsylvania, I have hunted here so long that and the process is year round for me. So I would still enjoy the process there, but it would be so weird for me because
the result would be
hunting deer that
disappointing,
just are
man.
not acting like deer. It would be very disappointing.
You probably wouldn't kill anything because it's so much easier to kill a deer in Iowa.
But no,
I know it's easier. I know it's easier.
Well,
I'm totally
it's not,
kidding, dude. I'm
not
just busting
arguing
your
it's not
balls.
easier.
it's such a depressing thing in that case, that situation, because obviously we know how you appreciate the process, right? But when the outcome is much less than what you're normally used to, it's like, how can you not be disappointed, right? That's just how it is,
Yeah.
which is where, like, when I bought my farm in Ohio, right, and all the things I did, all of a sudden I've got multiple mature bucks on my property in Ohio, and I'm like, this is amazing. Well, it's because I come from a place where if I see one mature buck using my property all year, I'm like, that was a success. I may not even saw him with my own eyes, but it was a success. So I go to these other places, right, and it becomes easier, it's more achievable. I mean,
it's a reality. It turns
anybody
your
that
dream
has,
into a reality.
Anybody that has to go the other way, I feel horrible for, because I don't know how
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how you cope with that
Yeah.
at all. Well, we talked about this, Chris, and I'm glad you're going, but it's like, well, where would you hunt? Well, Kansas makes sense because that's the next thing to Iowa, in my opinion, is Kansas. So, like, it's like, okay, if you're going to leave Kansas, where are you going to go? Yeah, Iowa makes sense.
And even within the state of Iowa, like, you can entrench yourself even more in the experience with things like land ownership, like with the habitat improvements that you have made, with history with certain deer, with focusing on different aspects.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, with getting your kids into it, it's like it really never. You could build an entire lifestyle around it. I mean, that's the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lucky.
I think the big thing, and we talked about it with the kid aspect, is, and then, Chris, I don't know how Iowa was, in the 90s when you were growing up, but at least, like, for me in Pennsylvania, I mean, it was a struggle, boss. I mean, like, I shot multiple button bucks and multiple, spikes, or, like, the first, like, good buck I shot was, I think, when I was in high school or college. But I mean, that obviously has driven me to where I'm at now, to, like, strive for these mature bucks and this challenge and stuff like that. I don't, having Iowa or having Ohio and Kentucky farms, I want my kids to have good experiences, but I don't want them to have such easy experiences that they don't appreciate it as well. I think that'll be a challenge for the girls in Iowa. One, because they're growing up in this, right? And it's your passion. So, I mean, your goal is to grow mature bucks on your farm. But
yeah, I think that the way we're looking at it now, right, is that back when I was growing up, there wasn't food plots, there wasn't box blinds. Those are two huge things here now.
Yeah.
People still hunt in tree stands here, but a lot of I look at Mark Jury. Mark Jury kills giant deer, and look, Mark won't even sit in a tree stand hardly anymore. He sits in box blinds in the evening on food plots. Great way to kill them. I think that a lot of the woodsmanship will potentially be lost as far as, like, being able to, like, read sign, understand terrain for hanging hunts, all those things. Those are the things I grew up doing, and I didn't kill my first Pope and young deer until I was in college. I killed my first deer when I was 12. I didn't kill a deer over 125 until I was 18. So it took me 6 years to shoot one over 125 here. And the amount of education just wasn't out there.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't people that are doing what they're doing now. And there's so much education, from podcasts to YouTube videos to everything that's going on. People can really start to figure stuff out. And it's just been a crazy progression. But as far as, like, my daughters go, I'm not going to go put them out there. I'm not going to force them to do it, number one. But number two, like, the oldest one showed interest, but I'm not going to go tell her what she can or can't shoot. And I'm also not going to go put her on some giant deer and have her pull the trigger, because I don't want it to be where it's, like, necessarily looked at as just so easy to shoot a big deer.
Sure.
And youth season starts at a time where these deer are very patternable. And I know some kids that are killing giants every single year. So unless she really starts showing that passion and she really wants to help me with the whole process, that's what I want her to do. I want her to understand everything, and then she can start to just, I guess, mature into hunting those bigger deer. But like last year, we went out like 3 times, and there was a 4-pointer, little 4-point buck that came out, and she had the crosshairs on him, and she was shaking so bad. This deer was like 30 yards, and she was shaking so bad she couldn't pull the trigger. And so
that's what you want, though. That's the feeling you want.
And he left, and then she started crying, like she was just bawling, and she was sad. She's sad. She thought she messed up, and then after that, she's like, "Dad, when did you kill your first deer?" And I go, "I was 12 years old," and she's 8, and she goes, "Well, I think I might wait till I'm about 12 to go again." I'm like, "Okay, we can go whenever you want." Well, now she's already talking about going again.
Yeah.
It's definitely a different world now.
It is.
We could say the same thing about so many things, though, right? Not just hunting. We could say it about all kinds of things. Like this old saying, I used to walk uphill to school both ways. Yeah. Our grandparents used to tell us that stuff all the time. So everything that we're doing has gotten easier.
Yeah.
Not necessarily where you guys are at. I'm not going to say hunting's easier where you guys are at than it was.
It is, though. I mean, the ability to kill a bigger buck in Pennsylvania is way easier than it was.
It's harder to find places to hunt, but you're more likely to kill a big deer if you find one.
Yeah, but in the same, like in the world atmosphere, like, I didn't have a cell phone until I was in college. Like now there's kids in elementary school with cell phones.
Right.
It's like, what the hell?
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I thought it was interesting, like, I guess just in general, like where passion for hunting comes from and how it comes and goes for some people, or how it's bred, I guess, in different people. I thought Jordan Winke, it's been interesting to see her getting involved with Bill, like on their new...
Coming back around.
Yeah, like,
cool.
Just to look at, and obviously I'm not as familiar as the situation as Bill would be, or the family situation, but like it seemed like, Jordan didn't hunt a whole lot, like, killed a couple bucks, with Bill as a young, when she was young. And then it kind of seemed like, she went to school, and I don't know if much hunting happened at all during that time.
She killed a couple deer. She killed a couple deer, but she was really into athletics. So I think she immersed a lot of time into everything she was doing with school and with sports and whatever else. And I know there's a way to do both, but Bill's a prime example. Didn't push her, and now it's all
and look at her coming back around. Like she's clearly, you hear her talking about, like, not like she's an expert on anything, but she's definitely
in it.
She's into it.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Appreciate you coming on, man. And obviously, Jared and I also appreciate the GSM support for Hunter with our brands. I mean, we use a lot of stuff with Muddy and Stealth and Hawk and Walkers, and so we always appreciate you guys supporting us and
sincerely,
providing us with good stuff to actually get out there and do what we love to do.
And appreciate you watching the podcast too, man.
Hey, you guys know I watch it.
I know you're a fan as much as you are. Yeah, so it's fun to have you.
I'm the #1 fan. I love it.
He's claiming his badge on Facebook.
Yeah, I think you more than anybody will send us a picture of boots up, beer in hand with the HUNTR Podcast on in your living room. So appreciate it.
Oh, that's funny, man. Yep. Well, we appreciate it, dude. And again, thanks for coming on. We'll be interested in hearing kind of how some of these plans work out this fall with the CRP and everything, and the farm starting to take shape. And excited for you too, man. It's a cool dream realized to come together, and I'm sure Alex and the girls are super excited and happy to have what they have.
Yeah, we're loving it out here, and I'll definitely keep you guys posted.
Awesome. Yeah, good to have Chris on there. I think I always just like to hear everybody else's story, and his was one. He's told me that numerous times, so I'm glad he would share it. But he was one of the ones that I at least had heard that was the most like pieced together from a realistic standpoint. I don't mean that against like Winky or even Skip, but like those guys have giant tracts of land. Yeah. And Chris is dealing with 155 acres, which is awesome.
Well, but it just fell into place.
The way he pieced it together, and
I think even he would say it's not like he orchestrated it. It just happened one, then the next, then the next. That's really the benefit of having a presence, and it's kind of the same as we didn't really get into it, but like being effective at killing deers, like the way to do it is you gotta be there, spend time there, observe, I think that's what got that farm put together.
Yeah, which is awesome. And so I think as, people listening to this, like sometimes maybe you have to start off with 30 acres, but that doesn't mean that the 50 next to you or the 40 next to you, you can't buy. And you also don't need to wait for it to come on the market. Call your neighbor, talk to him, build a relationship, and just say, hey, not pushing it, but anytime you think about selling, like make sure I'm the first call type of thing.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah. How about now? So yeah, it's not it's a cool process to see that all to come together, and yeah, he's got a pretty sweet place up there for sure.
Awesome. We'll have to swing by there sometime.
Yeah. But anyways, it's June 13th if you're listening to this. So we will catch you all next week.
Round in the corner to another deer season.
Yeah, Jared and I are going to be like hardcore scouting in July.
It's coming.
So yeah, by the end of
I'm
this,
gonna come. I'm gonna come everywhere.
by the end of this month, we should know what we're into.
That was
for
a Trump
deer.
quote, just for
Yeah.
record.
We should
That's
know
the
what we're
best
into
video
for some
ever.
deer.
Yeah. Do not come.
Do not come.
Do not come. I'm gonna come. Later.
Say it.
Take me